And you may say then that it is easy for a patient to just do a reoperation. And then I will share with you so that you can we can all try to put ourselves in the situation of the patient. I will share with you when I worked with some of my young colleagues some 20 years ago, interviewing our old patients who had been edentulous for 20 years, you know, and then we treated them with osseointegrated implants, and suddenly, you know, they were able to eat beefsteak, etc. They could perform normally, and then we asked them this single question: what was the worst thing you experienced during the time you were edentulous? And we thought they were going to write about their inability not to eat proper food. We thought that they were going to write about that they lost their false teeth in most unsuitable circumstances, in public or even in private with someone else. Could also be bad. We had many patients who never told their husband or wife that they had false teeth. They kept it secret. And we thought that was going to be in our interview what came out. You know what came out? The day of surgery when we saved them. That was what nearly every patient wrote. That was the worst thing that happened to them. They loved the implants. But if they were going to say one thing only, that was the worst experience they had, then they named the day of surgery. And I didn't quite understand this until I myself later on happened to be in the wrong end of the scalpel. Because I needed I had a tumor that had to be removed from my face, and suddenly I could identify myself, and I understood perfectly well why our patients really fear the day of surgery. That we see is very small, right, and very rapid, and we drill in the bone and blah, 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 out, and in comes the implant. For us, it's simple. But patients, they look at the wound as number of stitches, right? I mean, oh, it's 4 stitches, or 5 stitches, right? To us, this is nothing. But to the patient, it's a lot. And believe me, if you are if you will happen to come in the wrong end of the scalpel yourself, you will understand this perfectly well. So we have to learn to put our patients first, and we have to realize that just replacing an implant is not an easy task for the patient. This is another type of very sort of challenging situation for them. The legal situation, as I said, is that in the United States and in Europe you don't need any clinical pre-testing. I don't know about Taiwan, but I know in Japan it's quite different. In Japan it could take 5 years, and I think even 6, 7 years sometimes to have a new implant accepted. They are slow. And of course it's easy to boast and say that we are right in America and Europe, but could it be vice versa, that the Japanese are right? They are taking the slow process. Please enlighten me, colleagues here. I'm not sure in Taiwan, would I be able to sell this pen to you in 2 months? Or do you have stricter regulations like the Japanese in Taiwan? Can I start selling an implant to you immediately? Perhaps you have stricter regulations, I don't know. Otherwise, I come back in 2 months and sell you the pen here. So they are not, osseointegration is not successful automatically. Clinical testing is not unnecessary. And I think that we have to have a critical mind. When I look at copycat implants, those that look like other implants that are marketed, buy my implant, it's identical to that and that major implant. I think that they must be regarded to represent a clear clinical risk until otherwise proven. We have bought such copy. We are doing a study at this time, actually. Started this study a year ago. We have had the time now to analyze some of those systems, copycat systems, and we found a lot of organic debris. We found potential surface impurities. And the batches we saw were very uneven from a topographical point of view, depending if we looked at implant number 1 in one batch or implant number 30. I can't prove, of course, that every implant copy must be bad. That's something else. But I can definitely say that several of them are not good. The ones we have been looking at so far is something I would never put in the mouth of a patient myself. A cheap implant may prove to be expensive. Now, we have to learn to analyze all new implants and decide if they represent a major change, a moderate change, or a minor change when you see them on the market, right? And I think we have to have a more critical attitude. We must stop believing in oral implant companies. If one of you here came up to me and said, I have now been able to re-establish a periodontal ligament, And I have been able to maintain that around oral implants, and that is what we are going to use in the future. Implants will be anchored in the same manner as teeth. Well, to believe you, I would like to see a 5-year randomized controlled trial where you compare with osseointegration. This is such an enormous change in our current routines, and if you can then prove after 5 years that this really is this new attachment principle really works well, even better than osseointegration, then let us sort of start using it routinely clinically. That's a major change. For the purpose of the discussion here, I've just said, I'm not sure whether this, what I demonstrate here, is a moderate change or not, but let's assume we call it that. Here you see abutments of different roughness in a patient. It's actually a study undertaken at our university under the guidance of a university ethical committee. And irrespective of the implant system you may prefer, they all have smooth abutments. But the question is if we could use rough abutments. Maybe, well, if you can demonstrate at least in a 1-year study that we don't have problems with it, maybe that would be satisfactory. What is a minor change? Is a minor change only that you have an implant documented with that it's 4 millimeters wide, and then you have a 4.5 millimeter, and you don't need another documentation? That is a minor change, perhaps. Or can we call the new surface that we have seen from Straumann and from AstraTech a minor change? When we look at them in the microscope, we cannot prove that these surfaces necessarily must be better than their predecessors. Astra has some evidence of it, but we can't prove it in the microscopes that they are right. But we cannot see that there are any risks associated with them. Is that a minor change? Well, I don't know. I don't think I am to decide this. I think that major implant organizations must nominate representatives to decide that when companies present new solutions, these experts, independent experts, will then suggest to every country, this is a major change, needs a lot of trials before we can recommend it. Or this is a minor change, you can start selling this rather soon because we don't believe this is dangerous, right? Etc., etc. That we have to do. We have to take back this, the leading role from the commercial companies. It's us, the clinicians, and our scientific representatives that are to decide whether an implant, a new implant, is good or bad. Not commercial companies that publish themselves on the advertisement pages of our major journals. So now, assuming then that clinical recording remains important, how should it be done? And we have experienced all sorts of clinical reports in the literature, and some of you who have been around for some time with implants may remember what I refer to as the implantologist light version. And I give an example. When Leonard Linko of North America, a blade vent user, was asked, what are your clinical results? He said, very, very good. And as evidence, he phoned up his patients and never saw them back, right? So this was written in a report from the US Ministry of Health after the Harvard consensus meeting. Telephone calls were made to 55 patients. 8 didn't answer, and 34 either had the numbers changed or were no longer there. But 11 patients were reported to be very, very pleased, and one man said the implant was fine, he buried his wife with it last year. We don't need to be great experts in clinical reporting to understand that this is an absolutely useless way. We don't learn anything from it. This is not how you can report the clinical documentation.